What's up guys? In this video, I will show you guys how to find high APR pools using Revert Finance. They recently released the Discover function, and it works really well if you're finding pools on major EVMs like Arbitrum, Base, and Ethereum mainnet as well. So if you're trying to accumulate Ethereum and you're looking for Ethereum pairs, Revert is one of the best ways to do so. If you guys are new here, my name is Richard. I'm a yield farmer and investor. And just a quick portfolio update before we dive in. My main portfolio is still doing pretty well here, 5.9 ETH of profit, but right now I'm focused on stacking more US dollar. But ideally for a lot of these Ethereum pairs, I do still prefer making an Ethereum profit here while I yield farm. You can see I'm beating holding in the market by quite a lot. And as altcoins move higher here in the next 6 to 12 months, my portfolio should grow to a pretty decent size. But as an altcoin investor, you can see sometimes my portfolio swings pretty wildly. Like recently, Pixel has seen a little bit of a retracement. It's a very small cap gaming token that I have a lot of conviction in. That's why I have such a big position. But alts in general are very volatile. And a lot of times we can make a ton of profit like this Bonk and Ethereum pool here when the token really takes off. So let's take a look at this Discover function here. And like always, none of this is financial advice, so please do your own research before making any investment decision. And what I can do here is do either a broad scan or a more specific scan. So there's two main approaches I like to do when it comes to finding liquidity pools. The first is a pool first approach. In this case, we're trying to find the highest APR pools before we do any research on any tokens. And the second approach is the token first approach, where we're diving deeper into the specific token that we want to yield farm. So let's take a look at both in this video. If I want to go for a pool first approach, I don't really want to set any filter for the tokens, right? I prefer yield farming on Uniswap because I find that the APR is typically better than Aerodrome, just because a lot of people concentrate their liquidity on Aerodrome and they use a lot of automation to chase the range. So the APR is much less there for a wide range strategy like I'm currently running. So I'm going to put this Uniswap here. I can search by pool address as well, but since we're doing a wide scan, I'm going to skip that. TVL, I like at least 30,000 to 50,000. So if I want like a more blue chip approach, I could start with 50,000 here and see what it pulls up. The APR, I can leave it blank, as well as the fees to TVL ratio. And then the pool age, I typically want the pool to be at least 30 days old, and then I can apply. You can always adjust this TVL number as well, based on what you're trying to find. If I'm trying to find smaller cap altcoins, I could go with a lower TVL. But sometimes there are blue chip pools as well with lower TVL that pulls a lot of volume and a lot of fees. So I don't want to miss that. That's why I like to use a lower number for that. And as you can see, it pulls up a bunch of different pools here. And what I like to filter by is this fees to total value locked ratio. And this basically normalizes like the fees you generate, right? Because sometimes some of the pools have like this 0.05% fee tier. By using the actual fees they generate divided by the total value locked, which is the amount of liquidity in the pool, it actually is a more fair comparison between like 0.05% and this 1% fee tier because the volume doesn't tell us much, right? This amount of volume generates more fees for the 1% compared to this 0.05%. You can see for this specific pool, it pulls in like $196,000 worth of fees, even though the volume is much less than this USDT to Bula pool, right? But you can see a lot of these tokens are very small cap and meme coins. If you're trying to find high risk, high APR pools, then this specific setting could be great. For example, SPX and USDC here is a very popular meme on Ethereum mainnet. It's currently pulling a 341% APR. MOG and ETH, I'm currently yield farming, very high APR as well. A pretty large meme on Ethereum as well. And we can see different pools like Ethereum to Syrup, a more DeFi focused project, as well as Kita, a newer blockchain that launched their token on Base. We see this Bonk to Ethereum pool that I'm currently in as well. So the APR on that pool has been really great. And what I really like is you're able to change the date range for the APR as well, right? If I switch to 1 day, I would see that these pools are really hot recently. Like for example, Zora to ETH has been really hot recently, Clanker to ETH, Toncoin to USDC here, Pengu to Ethereum. So some of these tokens are very hot. If you're trying to find something more consistent, you can filter out by longer time frame. Even using this 1 year time frame here, we can see what it pulls up. So for the 1 year time frame, we see a bunch of older pools here, stuff like Vader, Kaido, Cookie, AIXBT, and a bunch of these pools are on Base because Base usually has a lot of volume, especially recently. But I think the 1 year is a little bit too long here because some of these pools might have done really well like a long time ago, right? For example, AIXBT probably did really well a long time ago, but now it's struggling a little bit. So then maybe I would change back to 1 month here. And I could also adjust the state here if I don't want these newer meme coins to basically be on there. Let's do 60 days. So here I can see a slightly different list and I can take a look at some pools that are standing out to me here. For example, Tau. Tau is an AI project. Honestly, I haven't looked that deep into Tau yet, but it's a pretty popular AI token. I could look at the full stats here and it pulls up this page. What I typically like to do is to filter by age. So we can see that really old pools that were running full range strategies actually got 23-24% APR. So we know that right off the bat with a full range, the APR is quite high here at 24% APR. We can take a look at a little bit of other pools here. A range of 0.078 to 0.31 is pulling a 50% APR over the last 2 years here. Some of these pools are newer, has been in range for 5 days, but conservatively for a wider range strategy, I believe that 30 to 50% APR is very achievable with this pool. And if we look at BitTensor Tau here, you can see Tau is actually ranked number 30 with a market cap of 4.43 billion. So it's much safer to be yield farming this compared to like a random meme coin, right? If I look at the chart of Tau here, and this is typically what I like to do, I don't want to do a bunch of research on the token. If the chart just looks really bad and it just keeps trending down when it should have been trending up, right? So we can see Tau actually has been performing pretty well in this bull market here. We see it rocket up from $45 all the way to $700 something dollars. Now it's resting at $400 something dollars. So near the middle of the range here in the US dollar terms. But you can see every time it dips to this around $200 mark, there's buy pressure that steps in and then pushes the price upwards. So based on this chart, it's pretty bullish and it's consolidating sideways here, potentially for another leg up in the altcoin season. And what I like to do before I do any research is to look at relative strength here. So compared to Ethereum, Tau has actually done a pretty decent job of keeping up. Right now, a lot of smaller cap altcoins are actually underperforming Ethereum because Ethereum is seeing a ton of institutional inflow and traders and retail just haven't begun rotating to smaller cap that much recently. So Tau has been doing pretty okay. It's trading in this zone of support here. So it's potentially a really great entry, but we could see that in this past, sometimes people does sell off this token and we do reach this area of support. So this is like one zone of support where the prices bounce back here and back here, but there's another zone lower here. So if this area break, we could potentially see this zone. So it's a decent entry, not the best entry, but still way better than like entering into the pool when the prices are really high, right? This is important again, because if we get a good entry, if prices are trading above your entry, you're going to be suffering a positive impermanent loss in Ethereum terms, which means that if you're swapping from Ethereum, you'll be generating more Ethereum because whatever Tau you bought is getting sold back to Ethereum at a higher price than your entry, right? So this is actually really good. And if I want to invest into this token, the next step is to just do the research on the project before I actually deploy my capital. So just by using that tool, we found Tau, right, on Ethereum mainnet that we could potentially yield farm with. And let's take a look at some other ones here. So ETH and Syrup here on base has actually been doing pretty good as well. So let's take a look at the position performance, filter by age once again. So the last 28 days with a fairly wide range LP, you could see they're earning a 80% APR. Some of these pools are newer here, so we're not sure about the performance. I could look at the specific NFT and dive deeper. So if I look at the ETH range they set, the range is fairly wide here. And you can see if you guys do get a bad entry like they did in this case, even though the APR is really high, it's very likely that you're bleeding out in Ethereum terms here. You can see they're down 19% on their investment. It's not a big deal if the asset recover back above their entry and they're compounding the fees as the prices drop, which is what they're doing right now. You can see they deposit, they collect the fees, they compound some of the fees, right? So it's doing okay. And if the prices do recover, this negative divergence loss would be wiped away while they're earning a really, really good APR. So Syrup is a potential pool that we could get into as well. I believe I have that on my list here. So right here, Syrup USD. So this chart is a little bit newer. Maybe it's a newer token. I believe the Syrup token is from Maple Finance. So let's take a look at that. It does seem like it is a newer token here. And new tokens could be good because there's not a lot of like price history. So when the market condition is really good, maybe it would go parabolic because people don't really know where the top is going to be, right? So it's much easier to enter like price discovery, especially if there are solid fundamentals about it. But let's take a look at Syrup to Ethereum here. So Syrup and Ethereum, you can see it's bouncing off of like the 200-day simple moving average. So this is a really great entry compared to like what you were seeing a couple months back. And if you're bullish on Syrup, this could potentially be a great token to get into. Again, really high APR, even with a wide range here. What they're setting is 0.00081 and 0.003. So if I mark those ranges, 0.0008 and then 0.003, so fairly wide, right? And sometimes I like to go even wider. So if I want to have less capital loss, maybe I move it down slightly to 0.0007 or even lower here at 0.0005. I could change the upper range as well to all the way here to capture the next 6 to 12 months, especially if I expect smaller cap altcoins to outperform Ethereum. But with a range like this, I could probably still get like around 50% APR on this pool. So it could be really solid as well. But that's basically the whole process for like a pool first approach, right? We're looking at a bunch of different pools here. It doesn't matter which scanner you use. We're doing the same thing. We're filtering out like the newer tokens that are too new and too high risk. And then we could discover a bunch of different pool, right? Even Ethereum to Uni here that is pulling a really good APR. But what I also want to show you guys is like the token first approach. Let's say I want to yield farm Ethereum and USDC, right? I could filter for that. So here it pulls a bunch of different pools. For example, this Ethereum to USDC on Unichain here. I can check the full stat and see how much the APR is pulling. Filter once again by age. So we don't actually see a lot of data here. Some people are squeezing the range. The liquidity concentration seems to be a lot. So maybe this pool is not too great. Let's take a look at this ETH to USDC pool on base here. Again, click the view full stat. I want to filter by age. So over the last year here, some of these pools are only pulling a 24% APR for this amount of range. The 2,000 to 6,000 range is pulling a 20% APR. So the APR is pretty decent on this one. It's not as high compared to some of those other pools that I've seen. So basically the idea is we could take a look at each one here, filter by age once again. For example, on this USDC to Ethereum pool on Unichain, the fee APR for a full range is actually pretty good, 8 to 9% over the last 100 something days here. And I like to use the full range as the comparison if I can find it, just because it's more fair, right? It's very hard to compare like all of these APR because the ranges are all different from each pool. So I like to look at the full range APR. 7 to 10% is quite good, especially on a blue chip asset. We can zoom out here. There's some concentration in this range, but if you're expecting like the price to move sharply upwards, you can print a ton of APR here as these tight ranges get knocked out of range. Let's take a look at this pool here. I'm currently in this pool. So I could click the view full stat. It's on Ethereum mainnet. In this case, I'm prioritizing like the security because I want more funds to be on the Ethereum mainnet rather than like in a layer 2. So that's why I'm yield farming this pair here. But also we can see it's seeing a similar distribution curve where the concentration is pretty concentrated right now. And if the prices do rips higher, I could print a lot of fees as well. Let's take a look at the age here. Over the last 200 something days, you can see the fee APR is actually quite great for a pretty much full range LP here. Quite high, but over the last 100 days, it's 7 something percent. Over the last 19 days, it's only 5 to 6%. So we could see maybe the fee APR for this pool is not that consistent, but over a longer time period, this pool does have pretty great APR. So I'm just going to keep my liquidity in this pool in this case, especially since I'm prioritizing security on Ethereum mainnet, then I want to keep my LP there. And we can do the same thing for like different tokens as well, or you guys want to filter out for like, let's say USDT. If you prefer USDT, right? We can see this Ethereum to USDT pool here on ETH mainnet. This 0.01% could be good as well. If we expand here and view full stats, filter by age once again. Over the last 200 days, 11%, 100 something days, 9%. So this pool could be also really great if you want to hold more USDT, and the liquidity curve seems to be flat. And sometimes the data doesn't pull for Revert. So you do have to go on Uniswap to check for the pool. So I could copy this pool address here and then go to Uniswap, search for the pool. If I click onto it, I should be able to see the liquidity. You can see it's concentrated near the $3,300 to $4,000 range. But if I expect Ethereum price to go to like $5,000 to $6,000, I don't mind just camping out into one of these pools. And then if prices do drift higher, I would also print a lot of fees as well. And we could look at the volume consistency here as well over 1 month or over 1 year. You can see the volume has been pretty consistent in this pool. So this could be a really great pool to be in as well, especially if you're working with larger capital and you're prioritizing security like I am by yield farming on Ethereum mainnet. So that's pretty much it, guys. And this tool is really great because you can filter out like the pools you're looking for very easily on the major EVM chains. And the nice thing about it is completely free. You don't really have to pay for anything. So play with it and let me know what you guys think. And if you guys want to learn more about yield farming and how to make consistent profits from liquidity pools, then be sure to check out my channel. I try to give you guys the most value I can in each of these videos. Thanks once again for watching. I'll catch you guys next time.